And you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines. National Guard troops hit Los Angeles streets as immigration protests enter a third day, sparking more arrests after at least 10 detained on Sunday. Governor Gavin Newsom calls the deployment unlawful and urges President Trump to pull troops immediately. Top US and Chinese officials meet in London to revive a Geneva pact and cool escalating tensions over tariffs and export controls. With rare earth minerals and supply chains at stake, the talks signal a crucial push to stabilize global markets after months of trade turmoil. President Trump's new travel ban takes effect today, blocking entry from 12 countries, mostly in Africa and the Middle East, to protect national security. The order also imposes partial restrictions on 7 more countries, though exemptions apply for diplomats, athletes, and certain work visas. Israeli forces intercept a yacht heading to Gaza with 12 aboard, including climate activist Greta Thunberg, who says they've been, quote, kidnapped. The Israel calls it a selfie yacht and plans to show the group footage of Hamas's October massacre. Global pressure builds to protect the activists. South Korea's President Lee Jae-myung and Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba agree to boost bilateral ties and coordinate on North Korea. Lee says pragmatism will guide his foreign policy, including security cooperation with Japan and the United States. Israel says it recovered the bodies of Hamas military chief Mohammed Sinwar and Rafah Brigade commander Mohammed Shabana in a tunnel under a Gaza hospital. The IDF claims the site doubled as a command center with weapons and documents also uncovered in the strike. Iran says there is no sanction relief in the latest US proposal and calls it unacceptable. Iran threatens to scale back IAEA cooperation if a resolution is passed. China orders all large hospitals to offer epidural anesthesia during childbirth by year end, aiming to build a friendly childbearing environment by 2025. All tertiary hospitals must comply, while smaller secondary hospitals have until 2027, says the National Health Commission. Now our top story today, we go to the United States. Tensions rise as violent protests grip downtown Los Angeles. FBI Director Kash Patel has made it very clear that the Bureau will enforce the Constitution without needing anyone's permission. He pledged to restore law and order in Los Angeles, where protests have turned violent. The LAPD declared the downtown protests unlawful and ordered crowds to disperse immediately, responding to blocked roads and safety concerns. This comes as President Donald Trump deployed the National Guard amid rising tensions over federal immigration raids. In a fiery statement, Trump warned of troops everywhere, saying, "They spit, we hit." The protests erupted after ICE agents arrested dozens of migrants, leading to clashes with federal officers. Demonstrators blocked highways and even set self-driving cars on fire, while tear gas and flashbangs filled the streets. On his social media platform, Truth Social, Trump called Los Angeles, quote, invaded by illegal aliens and criminals, and vowed to liberate the city. Let's hear more from what the president had to say about the issue.
Insurrection Act, you still playing it through?
Well, we're going to have troops everywhere. We're not going to let this happen to our country. We're not going to let our country be torn apart like it was under Biden at this auto pen.
What is this all our first thing, Marie?
As far as what I think it is, I mean, if we see danger to our country and to our citizens, we'll be very, very strong in terms of law and order. It's about law and order.
Secretary,
we're going to see what we need. We'll send whatever we need to make sure there's law and order.
Meanwhile, California Governor Gavin Newsom condemned the move, calling it a serious breach of state sovereignty. He formally demanded the troops be withdrawn. Democratic governors joined in, calling the deployment an alarming abuse of power. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass accused the Trump administration of provoking chaos, saying, quote, "This isn't about public safety, this is about another agenda." Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum condemned the US raids, revealing 35 Mexicans were detained. "They are not criminals," she said. "They are honest people seeking a better life." Here's what the Mexican president had to say.
Las mexicanas y los mexicanos que viven en Estados Unidos son hombres y mujeres de bien, son hombres honestos, que se fueron a Estados Unidos a buscar una mejor vida para ellos y para aportar a sus familias. No son criminales, son hombres y mujeres de bien, honestos.
Rice, Professor of International Law, located in Vigan, the Philippines. Jim, thank you very much for joining us. This has been an ongoing situation for 3 days now, Jim, and we've seen the conflict between the federal and state governments here. How unprecedented is it for a US president to have a conflict, direct conflict, with a government like the California government?
Thanks for those questions, Thomas. Those are very good issues. It's very unprecedented to try and answer your question. As your segment pointed out, the United States is not one vast jurisdiction, but it's a federalist system based on the federal, the state, county, and municipal jurisdictions. And what Trump has done by bringing in the California National Guard over the head of the governor of California, whose power that rightfully is really an abuse of power and is unprecedented.
Jim, what do you think of Trump's language in these situations? He talks of the city of Los Angeles as being invaded by migrants. What are your thoughts?
Okay, again, excellent question. This is part of Trump's I believe, sinister attempt to perform a power grab. He's basically setting a predicate, albeit a fake one, a false one, to try and declare some kind of emergency rule. And just to discuss an earlier point that when you had me on. Trump was in fact elected, and he did run on the issue of immigration. But at the same time, the rhetoric that Trump was using during that campaign was all about he was going to arrest and deport the worst of the worst, these very violent and threatening and dangerous persons. But in fact, it turns out that what ICE, the Immigration Customs Enforcement, have been doing has been coming into schools, coming into places of employment, coming into courtrooms, and arresting people whose only offense has been being an undocumented person.
Jim.
And so this is designed to, tear our society, tear American society apart.
Jim, I just want you to give us a quick legal rundown. Apologies for the interruption.
Sure.
But do you think that the states have sovereignty for a reason here? And do you think we can expect any challenges in the court from Donald Trump having this opposition to the state sovereignty? Gavin Newsom said California was perfectly fine to deal with these clashes on their own. I mean, do we see any more legal repercussions for the Donald Trump administration?
Well, there will be. I believe that I think Governor Newsom has already suggested that he's bringing litigation to challenge Trump's usurpation of the National Guard. Remember, he called up the National Guard without consulting Governor Newsom, whose power it belongs to.
Yes, and obviously we've had condemnation from both Mexico and other human rights groups. How might this escalate the relationship between Mexico and the United States. We've kind of seen Donald Trump move from Muslim countries, which we'll discuss later, into Latin American and Central American countries being the greater villain in this administration, particularly their immigrants. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, thank you for including the President of Mexico's comments in your introduction. Well, Trump doesn't seem to care about the allies of the United States or the close business partners of the United States. What this is all about is it's all about Trump, and it's all about Trump's attempts to consolidate all power within himself. Just to give you a tiny example of this, in one of his tweets he sent out, he said that the wearing of face masks on the part of protesters was banned. Well, let's just sit back and look at the legal authority for that. Did he cite a law? Did he cite a case? Did he cite anything? No. Trump seems to be governing by dictatorial powers at this point.
Jim, thank you very much for joining us. You are staying with us. We now stay in the United States for more domestic policy. US President Donald Trump's controversial travel ban on citizens from 12 different countries has officially taken effect today, marking a major escalation in his administration's immigration crackdown. The ban targets nations including Afghanistan, Iran, Somalia and Yemen, countries Trump claims pose security risks due to terrorist presence, poor identity verification and high visa overstay rates. Partial restrictions have also been imposed on 7 others, including Venezuela and Cuba. The travel ban forms part of Trump's policy to restrict immigration into the United States and is reminiscent of a similar move in his first term when he barred travelers from 7 Muslim-majority nations. Trump cited the incident in Boulder, Colorado, where an Egyptian national who had overstayed his visa threw a gasoline bomb into a crowd of pro-Israel demonstrators as justification for the new travel restrictions. He claimed the attack underscored the extreme dangers posed by inadequately vetted foreign nationals, even though Egypt is not among the countries affected by the ban. Critics say the ban will further disrupt refugee pathways and unfairly target nations with limited diplomatic ties to Washington. Diplomats and athletes competing in events like the 2026 World Cup and 2028 Olympics will be exempt from the ban. We're once again joined by Jim Rice to discuss this in further detail. Jim, as we previously said, this is reminiscent of his first term in office, his highly controversial Muslim ban, some people called it. What are your thoughts on this ban, this being brought in and being very similar to that ban that was very, very controversial in his first term? How do you think this is going to affect America? Do you think this is going to have the positive effects that he claims it's going to?
No, it won't have positive effects. The only thing it will do is to make America more isolated. And one of the side effects of this has been increasingly other nations are putting visa restrictions on Americans when they travel to other countries. But once again, as in the case of the Los Angeles protests, what Trump is doing is he's scapegoating and demonizing individuals from other countries. It's interesting that, you know, as the Ukraine war continues on, Trump isn't banning travelers from Russia. Trump hasn't banned travelers from Saudi Arabia or other countries such as that. So it's very selective. It won't have any positive effects in terms of making Americans safer. But your point is absolutely correct. It's part of Trump's attempts to destroy the asylum system, the idea where people who are fleeing from persecution in other countries are able to come to the United States and get political or religious asylum.
Jim, we've said this previously, but Egypt wasn't on the ban list, yet he used the anti-Semitic attack in Boulder, Colorado as evidence for this ban. Do you think this weakens the administration's argument?
Of course it does. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I should have mentioned that in my earlier comments. I mean, Egypt is not on the list, and yet the perpetrator, who is obviously a deranged and hateful person, whose actions we all condemn, Egypt wasn't on the banned list. So clearly, this is a demonstration of the Trump administration's hypocrisy.
Jim Rice, thank you very much for joining us on the programme. Always a pleasure to get your insight. We now move over to Europe, where a rare long-range drone strike has hit deep inside Russia, temporarily halting operations at an electronics plant in Shorvasia, over 1,300 kilometres from Ukraine. Regional Governor Oleg Nikolev confirmed that 2 drones fell on the grounds of the Vir facility, prompting a temporary shutdown to ensure worker safety. No casualties were reported. The Russian Defense Ministry claimed 49 Ukrainian drones were destroyed overnight, including 2 over Shorvasia. Another drone was reportedly found in a field near the region's capital of Cheboksary. Meanwhile, a separate drone strike damaged a gas pipeline in the Voronezh region, cutting supply to over 20 customers. Now, in a related development, Russian President Vladimir Putin has approved a new long-term naval strategy aimed at restoring Russia's status as a global maritime power. According to the Kremlin aide Nikolai Patrushev, the plan, titled The Strategy for Development of the Russian Navy up to 2050, was signed off by Putin in late May. Patrushev, a close ally of Putin, said Russia's position as one of the world's greatest naval powers is gradually recovering. He stressed the importance of a long-term vision for a naval development, including emerging threats and evolving security challenges. Russia currently has the 3rd most powerful navy in the world, behind only the US and China, but has suffered notable losses in the war with Ukraine. No specific details of the new strategy were released, but it comes as a massive increase in defence spending, now here nearing Cold War era levels. We now move to the Middle East, where Israeli forces have intercepted a Gaza-bound aid boat carrying activists carrying a small amount of aid, including climate campaigner Greta Thunberg. The British-flagged vessel, named Madeleine, was stopped overnight in international waters while attempting to break Israel's long-standing naval blockade of Gaza. Officials confirmed they have taken control of the boat. All 12 crew members are reported to be safe. The yacht carried rice and baby formula as symbolic aid. Israel called the voyage a propaganda show in support of Hamas and promised to deliver the remaining aid through official channels. The Freedom Flotilla coalition, which operated the vessel, says the mission was meant to highlight Gaza's humanitarian crisis. The Foreign Ministry confirmed that the yacht was redirected after entering a restricted zone and is now being towed to Israel. All passengers are safe and will be returned to their home countries. The activists shared pre-recorded messages with Thunberg, saying they were kidnapped in international waters. Israel say the small amount of aid aboard will be sent to Gaza through established channels. The mission was meant to highlight the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, where the UN warns of famine and disease amid the ongoing conflict. Meanwhile, the Israeli military has confirmed the death of senior Hamas commander Mohammed Sinwar. The body was recovered from a tunnel beneath the European hospital in Khan Yunis, and he was killed in an airstrike on May the 13th of this year. Sinwar was the younger brother of Yahya Sinwar, the man behind the October the 7th attack on Israel. Both were killed in the same region, known as the Shadow. He had long evaded capture until he was finally tracked and targeted. We move on now. Top American and Chinese officials are set to meet in London today for high-stakes trade talks, preserving a fragile truce between the two world's largest economies. The second round of negotiations follows a temporary agreement reached last month in Geneva that eased tensions and sparked relief in global markets. But since then, the truce has come under strain, with Washington accusing Beijing of dragging its feet, particularly on promised exports of rare earth minerals crucial to global supply chains. Leading the US delegation are Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and Trade Representative Jameson Greer. China will be represented by Vice Premier He Lifeng. The talks come just days after President Trump and President Xi Jinping spoke by phone for the first time since Trump's return to the White House in January. The call was described as very positive by Trump, while Xi urged that both sides work to steer the ship of bilateral relations back on course. The talks will not include the UK as a participant, but British officials have welcomed the meeting, calling it a step towards free and fair trade. Among the key issues on the table are export controls, the future of rare earth shipments, and compliance with the 90-day tariff rollback agreed in Geneva. We stay in the world of US diplomacy for our next story, where tensions are rising as Iran rejects the latest US proposal in stalled nuclear talks. Iran's parliament speaker said on Sunday the American offer includes no sanction relief, a key demand from Tehran. Mohammad Baghdad Ghalibaf accused the US of dishonesty and publishing a one-sided deal. He warned that Iran would not accept a proposal without meaningful concessions. At the same time, Tehran issued a sharp warning to the International Atomic Energy Agency. Iran says it will reduce cooperation with the UN nuclear watchdog if an anti-Iran resolution is passed at the agency's board meeting on Monday. The Atomic Energy Organization of Iran called current cooperation, quote, broad and friendly, but warned that could quickly change. Iran's foreign minister and top nuclear negotiator says Tehran will not seek permission from any country to enrich uranium. Talks remain deadlocked as both sides hold firm. The IAEA has cited a lack of cooperation from Iran in its latest report. Now let's move over to South America, where a potential contender for Colombia's 2026 presidential race, Senator Miguel Uribe, remains in intensive care after surviving an initial surgery following a shocking assassination attempt in the capital of Bogota. The 39-year-old opposition lawmaker from the right-wing Democratic Center Party was shot in the head and the leg during a campaign event in a public park on Saturday. According to the hospital treating him, Uribe's condition is still critical, but his wife confirmed he made it through the first operation, calling it his first battle. Let's take a listen to what Uribe's wife had to say.
Luchando fuertemente por su vida y les pido a cada uno de ustedes que sigamos en oración fuerte, que no desfallezcamos y que estemos unidos en oración. Gracias.
Police have arrested a suspect, an underage boy who was found carrying a Glock-type pistol. Authorities are investigating whether others may have been involved, while President Gustavo Petro has ordered a full probe into who might have orchestrated the attack. The attack has sent shockwaves through Colombia, people who took to the streets in Bogota to reject the attack on Uribe. We move on once again. An explosion at a US military base in Japan has left 4 people injured. The blast occurred today at Kadana Air Base in Okinawa, inside an ammunition depot by Japan's self-defense forces. Local media reports say the incident happened while SDF personnel were preparing for a bomb disposal operation. 4 members of the self-defense forces were taken to hospital with minor injuries, including burns to their fingers. None of them are in critical condition. There has been no evacuation order for nearby residents, and police are now investigating the blast. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte is set to visit the United Kingdom today. During his trip, Rutte will meet Prime Minister Keir Starmer in London for talks likely focused on defence cooperation and transatlantic security. He will also address an audience at Chatham House, a leading think tank on global affairs. Later, Rutte will join Defence Secretary John Healey for a visit to Sheffield Forgemasters, a key player in the UK's defence industry. We stay in Europe for our next story. Residents of Serbia voted in a crucial local election amid ongoing protests against the government. The election tested President Alexander Vucic's ruling Serbian Progressive Party following deadly protests sparked by a tragic building collapse. Vucic claimed victory with over 50% of the vote, while opposition candidates also declared success, citing strong support from student-led protest groups. Police stepped in to control clashes between rival supporters, with voter turnout reportedly above 80%. The election reflects deep political tensions. Vucic called the protests a foreign-backed attempted coup and hinted at possible national elections very soon. We now turn to the Indo-Pacific for our next story, where a South Korean court has indefinitely postponed the trial of President Lee Jae-myung, who faces charges of making false statements during his 2022 election campaign. The decision comes after the Supreme Court earlier ruled that Lee had violated election law and sent the case back to an appeals court. The Seoul High Court was set to hold a hearing on June 18th, but now says the date will be decided later. The move cites Article 84 of South Korea's constitution, which protects a sitting president from most criminal prosecution. But experts disagree on whether that applies to cases prosecuted before a president took office. Meanwhile, Lee's party plans to pass a bill to suspend ongoing trials for incumbent presidents, a move that could face constitutional challenges. Meanwhile, President Lee Jae-myung and Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba have vowed to strengthen bilateral ties as both leaders agree to coordinate closely on North Korea. President Lee said pragmatism will shape his foreign policy, including security, cooperation with Japan and the United States. To South America once again, where a powerful earthquake has struck central Colombia, rattling the capital of Bogota. The U.S. Geological Survey recorded the quake at magnitude 6.3, with its epicenter near the town of Paratabueno, around 170 kilometers east of the capital. Colombia's own geological service registered the tremor slightly higher at 6.5. The quake sent residents rushing into the streets, with buildings shaking and sirens blaring across the Colombian capital. Let's listen in to some who evacuated the city.
Fue un susto grande, quedamos nervios porque no estábamos preparados en este momento a ningún tipo de estas situaciones y pues genera, digamos, como miedo, sobre todo por la familia.
Tembló durísimo, un sismo. Como parece que es entre 5 y 6 grados en la escala de Richter. Hace ya un tiempo no lo sentíamos así de fuerte acá en Bogotá, aunque tiembla con frecuencia, hace rato no era así de duro, no se sentía así de fuerte.
Our Bogota mayor, Carlos Galán, said there were no reports of casualties, though one person was treated for an anxiety attack, and minor structural damage and power outages were reported in parts of the city. Services, he confirmed, have also since been restored. Colombia is no stranger to seismic activities. The region last saw a major quake of similar strength in 1999, which killed nearly 1,200 people. Authorities are continuing to monitor for aftershocks. Well, that's all we have time for, and we will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world. Thank you.